coming back for those that have good to excellent credit. FHA pricing is really good now, like under 3% for FHA for those with good credit. So it is, we're products that went away when the pandemic came are starting to come back. We still can't do as low of credit score as we could. We used to do loans with 530 credit score. That's not back yet, but we're getting there. So starting to heal, starting to open up, but rates are still at record levels. We've never been lower than where we are right now with most products under 510,000 and under 765 loan amounts. So things are getting better.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
that's great to hear. All right, great. Anybody have any questions for Shane before we move forward? Any great questions, closing questions, anything at all for Shane? All right, Shane, you've been doing too good of a job answering all the questions in the past. No one has any left.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks for being a great partner, as always. We really appreciate it. Definitely recommend anybody who's looking for somebody in the mortgage space to look up Shane. Shane, maybe if you can throw your contact info in the chat for anybody who doesn't already have it.
Sounds good. Will do.
That would be awesome. All right, and we have Daniel Dembski here. Is Daniel on the line yet?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
Yep. How are you?
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Daniel is one of our trusted, approved attorney partners. Lisette, is there anything you wanted to say before we get started about your partner, Daniel, or should we just turn over to Daniel?
No, absolutely. Daniel works with some of our top agents in the Rutherford Market Center, and he does an incredible job. He's highly responsive to questions. There's so many positive things that I can say about Daniel, but most importantly is his level of professionalism.
Thank you.
Right. That's a big endorsement there. Awesome. So Daniel, we can open it up to questions, but I think maybe you were going to talk a little bit about COVID and its impact on closings that you're seeing.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to speak about how COVID had the lockdown, COVID-19 lockdown has affected landlord-tenant ejectments and how it pertains to real estate closing. So before I go into all that, let me just introduce myself again. By the way, Luis Fernandez is here. He works in our office as well. We're part of the Sharami law firm. We have 6 attorneys, 3 locations, Jersey City, Lodi, and in Newark. And all we do, all 6 of us, is specialize in real estate. If you ever give us a call, you will never get a message from our secretary that we're in trial the next 2-3 days. So anyway, I have a really good, nice 15, 20-minute landlord-tenant presentation, but I'm not gonna go into much detail today. I understand I only have about 5 minutes. So I'm gonna just basically briefly touch on how landlord-tenant law pertains to real estate closings and how it has been affected by COVID-19 lockdown. So anyway, there are basically 2 tenancies, okay? Tenancies that are protected by the Anti-Eviction Act. Basically what that means is you have to have a reason why you want to evict a tenant. And then there are tenancies that are not protected by the Anti-Eviction Act. The tenancies that are not protected by the Anti-Eviction Act are the tenancies that are in a 2 or 3 family home owner occupied. So when that happens and the landlord comes to me, I want to evict my tenant, as long as there is no lease, it's a month-to-month lease, we basically send a letter to the tenant that the tenant has 30 days to move out, reason, no reason, owner occupied. However, when there's a Anti-Eviction Act aspect to it, which protects the tenants, you need a cause of action. There are several causes of action. One obviously is non-payment, disorderly tenant, damage to the property, violation of the lease, etc., etc. There are about 12 causes of action, okay? Some causes of action need a letter to cease, basically just a warning, hey, I'm giving you a second chance, and then a notice to quit. Okay, you failed to correct your situation, now you need to move out, and you file an eviction. But again, I've given that presentation with more detail and actually in the Rutherford location, the Wayne location. If anybody's ever interested in hearing the full presentation, I'll be very happy to give it to anybody that wants it. Now, how has the COVID-19 lockdown affected all of this? Well, one, all of the complaints have to be e-filed. During normal times, okay, we would basically mail the complaints by mail or file them in person. Now they want us to basically file everything electronically. We needed to basically, my staff and I figured all that out about 2 weeks ago, how it needs to be done, because we've never done it, because that was never an option for landlord-tenant complaints. We can basically file all other complaints with all other courts electronically, but it was never given, the option was never given to us. Now, how else has it been affected? Well, like I said, they are accepting complaints, but they're not giving out court dates. So we file those complaints. I basically tell my clients that we can file it, we can basically get in line, but we don't know when we'll see a judge. Normally, we would basically see a judge within 3 weeks after it's been filed. Now we don't know. The governor yesterday has basically opened up New Jersey with limitations, but he has not officially lifted the emergency state of emergency in New Jersey. So the courts are still closed and nobody knows when they will open. One other last thing, basically how it's been affected is that tenants that are protected by the Anti-Eviction Act are allowed to get in touch with their landlords and apply their security deposit towards the rent. That was not the option. They did not have the right to do that prior to COVID. Now they do. One last thing I will leave you with is they also passed a emergency bill. $100 million is being put towards emergency assistance for tenants who are being evicted for non-payment. So landlords will be obligated to fill out forms and basically proceed with getting that assistance. And this has been passed in order to prevent a homeless problem basically in the state of New Jersey.
Great. That's very interesting and very helpful for us. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions, regarding this topic of landlord-tenant law and issues, COVID, or anything at all? It's an opportunity to ask an attorney a question without, being on the clock and having to pay for it. So get your questions in now. Anybody have anything at all?
This is Lewis here. Actually, I work at the Schramme Law Firm. I just wanted to chime in really quick that, with regards to what Daniel stated, there's, what issues I've come across, and Dan can vouch for it, when we have on these unruly tenants, I mean, in the beginning, we were able to send notices, even though they wouldn't have been enforced by the courts. We were trying to use that as leverage and almost like a scare tactic to hopefully get them to comply. That was in March. 3 months go by and tenants have essentially realized that the courts were closed, and if they were unruly, it was really just a matter of us. And what I told our clients, actually a realtor here from KW, he's not in the Zoom meeting, he can vouch for it, but
He was the unruly tenant?
An unruly tenant who does not want to, it's actually roommates. The seller has roommates and he doesn't want to even, the seller is saying that the roommates don't want to leave because there's a stay-at-home order. And
no, but the KW agent wasn't the unruly tenant though, was he? Is that what you're,
No.
KW agent wasn't the unruly
No.
tenant. Oh, okay.
At Polo, actually, he's dealing with we're on the buyer side, and we're dealing with a seller who has roommates that are unruly, and they aren't leaving because there's a stay-at-home order. Yesterday, the stay-at-home order was lifted. We're hoping, we can try to move this contract closer to the closing table, but it's been a standstill, and it's been a practice of patience for our client and for Paulo, because he's involved on, he's the agent for our client on it. It's just tough. So we're hoping that stay-at-home order being lifted will help kind of facilitate that transaction. And I did speak to, Dan, I don't think I told you, I did speak to a few colleagues who go to court who are more litigators than transactional attorneys. and they're telling me maybe by mid-July, the courts will probably be opening. So it's just the writing on the wall. There's nothing confirmed yet, and it's all speculation, but that's what they're preparing for.
I have a
Great.
question.
Thanks for the update.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. Is the landlord allowed to use the security deposit to make up for reduced rent without the tenant's agreement? If the rent has been reduced to accommodate some tough times,
Yeah.
and now the landlord wants to hit
So
the
no,
security.
the tenant has to request that in writing.
The tenant or the landlord?
The tenant has to request that in writing. Obviously, the landlord can reach out to the tenant. Hey, can I please, use the security deposit? And if you get confirmation, then you'll be okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think we
I
have
have
one
a
more question from Lynn.
Yes, I have a seller who's going to put her two-family house on the market. The one tenant in the house is on month to month. If a buyer doesn't want the tenant there or wants to offer a new lease and the tenant doesn't want it, will we have to evict the tenant? And I'm not quite sure how to handle it.
Yeah, it's a very good question. We come across it very often. Now, but before I answer the question, let me ask you this. Is both units are rented?
The owner lives in one unit and she has the other unit on a month to month and she wants to sell the whole house and
Okay.
leave.
Okay, so like I said, the tenant is not protected by the Anti-Eviction Act in this situation because the landlord lives there. So the only thing the landlord would need to do is mail them a letter, notice to quit, you have 30 days to move out, reason, no reason, owner occupied. However, if let's pretend this property was fully rented, it's a two-family fully rented, then you would need a cause of action.
Okay.
And the cause of action in this situation would be, hey tenant, we are under contract. The buyer intends to occupy one of the units. You have 60 days to move out. So not 30, but 60. We have a situation right now, where we are representing a seller with her sale of her condo in Jersey City. And she basically asked us to evict the tenant because the purchaser wants the property vacant. So what we did was we mailed the tenant back in, 2 months ago, basically, that the tenant needs to move out. Obviously, the tenant didn't move out. The tenant is aware that the courts are closed and he's taking his time from moving out. We found eviction and we don't know when we'll actually be able to see a judge because like we've said, the courts are closed.
Okay.
Can I answer your question?
Yes, make sure you have your contact info that we can grab after this because my owner, the seller, may want to use you for even those letters. So they're worded properly.
I
Excellent.
think it's in the chat already,
added
there, Lynn.
Okay, great.
All right, great. All right, well, Louis and Daniel, thank you so much for jumping on today, and thanks for being valued partners. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Lisette.
Thank you. All right.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
We'll be
You
logging
too.
off. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, now on to our featured speaker for the day. David, can you hear us? Are you there?
Sure am. Hey, Al.
How you doing today?
Doing great. Can you guys see me? Yeah, I say that. I can see myself.
Yes, we can see you. You're looking good, as always.
The COVID beard.
There you go. It's very common, the COVID beard. So I guess, I know a fair amount about you, but some of the folks on here don't. I thought maybe we could just start out by you just telling us a little bit, about yourself and your career, what,
Sure.
What you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So live in Atlanta, Georgia now, grew up North Detroit in Michigan, been down here 22 years. What brought me down here was a leadership author speaker by the name of John Maxwell, that some of you may be familiar with that name, and spent 19 years working with John and his organization, started the front lines, and a year into working with him, had my first management leadership position, and then had the privilege of wearing about every leadership hat in the book in the last several years as president of the John Maxwell Company. And through that, became incredibly familiar with so many of the top incredible leaders at Keller Williams. All the respect for your organization in the world. From John speaking at Mega Camp and Family Reunion several times over the years, to so many top leaders in Keller Williams coming to our leadership events, have just been privileged to have probably at least a 15-year relationship now. And so excited to be working with Al, the team, and with each of you today.
Awesome. So one of the things, this is really just a question for me. I don't know if this will be helpful for everybody else, but you've worked with Patrick Lencioni and you've worked with John Maxwell. How are those two guys kind of the same, and how are they different? What's it like working with both of those guys?
Yeah. So I feel so privileged to be able to have had the opportunity to spend pretty much my whole career working with two of the foremost experts on leadership, growth, teamwork. I would say similarities, both, in my opinion, two of the world's greatest communicators. I mean, I could listen to either of them all day. I've heard them speak countless hours, countless days when you stack them together, and it never gets old, listening and learning from either of them. It's interesting, though, in terms of how they run their businesses and even leadership styles, very unique and different. Both very good leaders, but John is pretty hands-off day to day with his organizations, and loves to be on the road, traveling, speaking, essentially out in the field. Pat does some speaking, but he is very involved day to day in leading the table group. So John has a CEO, a very good friend of mine, Mark Cole, who runs his organizations, and Mark is the day-to-day leader, with John writing and speaking. Pat is the day-to-day leader and in the office every day, incredibly hands-on with the team. So I would say that's, from a leadership style, how I see them differently. And they just know their wiring. They know their giftedness, their passion at this point. And John's get me out front, get me out of an office. Pat has put me with the team day in and day out.
Got it. Makes sense. One of the things, as I look back on our working with the table group, one of the things I think that was most helpful for us as a company was the time we spent creating our core values. It's something we reinforce every time we have a meeting, and it helped us look, anytime we have a difficult question, we kind of say, well, if we were to say I have a choice between investing in two different things, we think about which one, fits our core values versus doesn't. So on this call today, we have staff members, we have people that are on a team or run a team, but we also have individual agents. Around core values, it was so helpful for us. Is there any way, can you expand upon, how might that help an individual agent or a team? Would you recommend a team sitting down and coming up with core values as a team, or individual agent, their own individual core values?
Yeah, very, very much. So a couple thoughts around core values. Believe that they are discovered, meaning they are inherent. If we're talking about the organization, they're inherent in the organization and the team. Or if we're talking about individuals, they are inherent in us. A mistake I think people can make around values is to look at other organizations or look at other individuals and say, hey, I aspire to that. I want to be creative. I want to be innovative. And therefore, I'm going to call that a core value. Let me give three descriptions or kind of three criteria is a better way to say it, of what we believe is a true core value. Number one, it's got to be true and true today. So once again, it just can't be aspirational. If it's aspirational, we consider that an aspirational value of I'm trying to grow in that. And I know for me, I have core values individually, and I have two values that I consider aspirational in my life. I aspire to be more like that, but if I'm honest with myself, it's not truly true of me today for me and to consider it a core value. So it's got to be true today. Secondly, believe a true core value is going to differentiate us. So let's go to things such as integrity or honesty or ethics. I am all for those things, not down on any of them. But almost everybody would say, yeah, I should have integrity, I should be honest, I should have ethics. It doesn't differentiate us. Unless somehow in your behavior, you would exceed 99% of the people out there, if we're talking about a team, the team and the policies and how they operate would exceed 99% of other organizations, we'd say that's probably permission to play. It's table stakes, but a true core value differentiates. And then the third attribute of a core value, especially on a team, is it's non-negotiable, meaning we're not going to put up with behavior that is inconsistent with that core value. It doesn't mean we're perfect. We're all going to at times maybe not live out a core value perfectly, but the moment that it's not being lived out, we're going to have the hard conversation. We're going to coach that person up. And if ultimately they don't demonstrate that core value consistently over time, they're not going to be a good fit in the organization, and we're going to coach them out of the organization. But I believe every organization should have identified core values that anytime they're making people decisions, they're using the core values to make those decisions. And I personally believe, I know it's been incredibly helpful for me to discover what are your core values personally, will help you navigate decisions. Will also, when you find relationship conflict, almost always I can trace that back, whether people know their values or not, it's values rubbing up against each other. Meaning I value something that maybe somebody else doesn't. And why am I frustrated with them? Because I value that, they don't, and they're not trying to step on my core values. They're doing it unintentionally, or vice versa. I may be stepping on somebody else's core values and doing it unintentionally. So even in relationship conflict, oftentimes I think we can trace that back to maybe a misalignment of core values.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of the things we found so helpful with it, I think, not only does it help you attract, the people that make most sense for your organization, but it helps people on their own discover out. Like our number one core value is being learning based. And remember, we had an offsite with somebody at Table Group, and we were talking about it, and somebody just said, all this reading book stuff and training, like, I just don't buy into it. It's kind of a waste of time, and like within a couple days or maybe a week or two, the person left the company on their own. It was better for us. And I think they're happier too. They wound up somewhere that was a better fit for them, because I'm sure it's annoying for everybody to be saying, what book did you read? Did you finish the book? Did you go to the training? When you don't value that stuff, she just felt out of place. So it helped her and it helped us, it kind of works both ways,
I totally agree with that. And it's interesting. Oftentimes we want to just hang on to people that aren't our core values fit. Sometimes it's almost, we feel sorry for them. We don't want to make a tough call. And almost always when somebody leaves the organization, whether it was their call or not, they'll find some place that actually fits their core values, and they'll be happier, they'll be more effective, et cetera. I love how you guys use that. And I love the core value of learning.
Awesome. So when I was thinking about the questions I would ask you, I thought about it in terms of some of the books that I've read from your group. So one of my favorite ones is The Ideal Team Player.
Yep.
And I was thinking about it from my standpoint, that book was great for me or anybody running a team, because it's very clear why you want an ideal team player on your team or in your organization, right? But I wanted to try to make this as relevant to everyone as possible. So if I'm here and I'm an individual agent, and I run my own business and it's not a team, why is it important to those people to be an ideal team player? Or does it not matter if you work on your own?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. It's funny, Al, even as soon as I logged on, I thought, I hope we talk about ideal team player, because I think that'll be a perfect.
Oh, and by the way, just while you're mentioning it, a lot of times I give people the questions in advance. So David doesn't have any of these in advance. So, if I catch him off guard, it's my fault. I probably should have sent them ahead of time.
No, I told Al, I'm like, ask me anything. I enjoy that. So quick kind of overview on the 3 attributes of ideal team players. Is that all right, Al? I'm assuming it'd be quick to do, or good to do a quick overview. 3 things: humble, hungry, and smart. I'm gonna give a little more definition, especially to the smart. So humble kind of makes sense. Nobody's shocked by that. Ultimately feel like that is the foundational virtue. And these are virtues that we think of anybody that's going to be part of a team at any level need to possess in order to be a great or an ideal team player. The one thing I'd say on humility, and this is sometimes people think it means I have to be completely meek, mild, and almost undervalue myself. It's not at all what we mean. You're incredibly confident in who you are and the skills and expertise and what you bring to the team and the table, and you own it, you fully embrace it and step into it. you're just not self-centered or overly egotistical or something like that. Hungry is just people get after it. You know, the 110%, going to work hard, going to do more than is asked. They get after it. They get after it hard. On the smart piece, you hear that, and you naturally, we first think intellectual smarts. We think IQ. We're really talking about EQ. It's smarts around people. It's understanding that how my behavior is going to impact my teammates and those around me. And it's funny because I know as agents, it would be natural to feel like, hey, I'm an individual contributor. You know, I'm kind of an island unto myself. I know that to be successful, though, you're going to have to rely on some other people. Even the fact that, hey, this isn't a one-on-one call, this is a group call, that you're going to have to rely on others. Others are going to have to rely on you. And so, yes, I think those attributes and virtues matter for everyone, regardless of how integrated they feel on a team versus more as an independent agent. And secondly, I quite frankly, I know Pat calls them ideal team player or thinking teams because a lot of the work we do on teams. I think there are three phenomenal attributes or virtues for human beings to possess in general, or even in your role as an agent. Man, if somebody is humble, hungry, and has people smarts, I can practically guarantee they are going to have success in any field. At some point, Alan, and once again, we didn't plan or script this, so I'd love to give a exercise at some point of how do we self-evaluate? How do we improve, or how do we kind of slow down and say, am I humble, hungry, smart, or how do I move the needle in these areas?
Do we have time for that today, or is that you're saying for like another session?
No, I'm 2 minutes, and this could be
do it.
an application, just a little self-reflection. So we have descriptors, we have labels if somebody possesses like 1 out of 3 of those attributes or 2 out of 3 out of those attributes. I'm not going to go through all those now. I'll give like an example. If somebody is only hungry, but they lack humility and they lack people smarts, we call that person the bulldozer. They just kind of run over people. And I'm sure we could think about people that we've worked with that would fit that bulldozer mentality. They'll get things done, but man, they don't get along well with people, and it's all about them. So we want to be 3 for 3. And maybe everybody on this call is truly 3 for 3. Maybe they're an ideal team player. But even if you're an ideal team player, we believe that there's always one of these attributes, always one of these virtues that you can grow in. And so I like to use the example of think Olympics, gold, silver, bronze, okay? If you had to evaluate yourself in this season of your professional journey, out of humble, hungry, smart, what one would you say, I think I'm doing this best and most consistently? What's your gold? What's your number 2, your silver? And then what's your bronze? Not saying that you don't possess it, but if there was an area for you to be intentional and focus on, what would be the 3rd place virtue for you? And I think this can change over time. I know as I've done reflection on my career, there has been different seasons of my career that I would say each one of those 3 attributes has been my 3rd place virtue. But what I would challenge is everybody to say, if you had to say which is your 3rd place, which one? And then either through self-reflection or getting with somebody who works closely with you, ask them for some advice. Say, hey, I want to work on being more humble. Give me a piece of advice. Or I want to work on being more hungry. Give me a piece of advice. Or around people smarts. But it's a way to take this from just being conceptual and sound good of what is some action I can take to become an even better team player.
Makes sense. Anybody willing to share their 3?
And share their bronze, share their 3rd, you're saying?
Or just, where they feel like it's stacked up.
Yep, makes sense.
Hal, are you trying to talk, Hal? I can't tell you.
I wasn't, but I'll go. I'll go. I think for me, in order, gold to bronze would probably be smart, humble, hungry, and it changes, but that's probably accurate for right now.
It's good.
Knowing you, I would say that probably sounds good, but I think you're good at all 3. But for that order makes sense. I think from what I know of you, for sure. I like that exercise. That's something we could do like within groups, within our company, or at team meetings. It's we've done it before, and it always
Yep.
Generates interesting conversation. Usually people agree with it, or somebody will say, no, I think you're more humble than smart,
We did, in fact, during this quarantine period, I'm a geek when it comes to this stuff. I did it with my family, and it was a great, great family exercise, actually, because my number one is hunger. And it realized I've got 2 kids and a wife. Their number 3 was hunger for all 3 of them. And realized, man, when we have conflict, it has to do with because of my hunger, and that's their bronze. And it would just help in understanding. One of the other things I know about myself is I even rate myself differently in a professional context than in a family life context. It may not be true for everybody, but as I've done that self-evaluation, for me, hunger number 1 is across my gold, but my bronze is different in a work environment versus a personal environment, current state. And once again, I think, Hal, you said it, these things can change over time, but that was just some personal kind of in this season of life evaluation.
Awesome. All right, what's next? Yeah, I'd love you to talk about healthy versus smart.
Yeah.
So, and for everyone else here, I would say if there's one concept that our entire company is based on, it's this. I read this years ago, and it changed my life, and it changed how I thought about running a company. And it's really what brought us to, originally when we started opening up offices, I thought we would treat them as separate, distinct offices that, only shared the same name, but there would be no interaction, and really learning from this group about healthy versus smart really taught me that, our unique advantage in the marketplace could be how we work together, as a team rather than other companies. If you look at a Coldwell Banker or Remax, they might have 10 offices in Bergen County, but they're all 10 different companies. They don't help each other. Whereas we work as one unit. I learned that, David, from you guys. And maybe part of it was I was like, well, I think I can get us healthy, but I don't think I'm that smart. So, I kind of grabbed anything that said, well, you don't have to be that smart. Focus on the healthy part. Felt a lot easier for somebody like me. And I think it's the best concept I've ever learned in business.
I love it. Hey, I got to say this real quick. Remember the past segment when we were talking about that unruly tenant, and you asked if it's a Keller Williams agent? I looked it up. It was actually a Remax agent that was the unruly tenant. So
I knew it. We don't have unruly agents. They're all nice.
Exactly. I had to squeeze that in there.
I appreciate that.
So smart and healthy. So our work with teams, our work with organizations, really, honestly, it ties to 3 very simple models. And our value proposition is we help leaders and leadership teams, folks like Alan and the leadership team, master 4 disciplines of organizational health. That's kind of model number 2. Model number 1 is this idea of smart and healthy. And basically, as you look at organizations, specifically successful organizations, they do 2 things really well. They are smart and they are healthy. So it's not even a either or, it's a both and. But without a lot of discipline, organizations typically just focus on the smart side of their business and undervalue and underprioritize the healthy side. Let me define smart. Smart organizations or smarts within an organization would be like just the business disciplines. So, every organization from Keller Williams to Remax to Coldwell Banker, other real estate organizations, even outside of real estate, totally different industries. They're going to do things such as finance, IT, strategy, marketing, sales, operations, etc. Then, though, every organization is going to have some specialty smart disciplines that are very specific to what they do. All those things are important. It's not that we're not saying they are, but they are half that equation. Then we get to the other half, the healthy side. Here are the attributes of a healthy organization. Number 1 is there's minimal politics. A way to think about politics, and even think about this within your organization and other folks, agents, or team members that you interact with. The goal is, regardless of who you're having a conversation with, so we could take the Zoom call, we could break out any combination of 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 6 people, it wouldn't matter. And we could tee up a business topic, and a team that has minimal politics is going to talk about the the topic in a consistent way, regardless of who's in the room. Okay? We're going to bring our full thinking to the table. We've all been guilty of at times having a one-off conversation in the office, let's say. Unexpectedly, somebody opens the door and pops their head in. And what do? Like, we clam up because we don't want them hearing what we were talking about. Or even if we keep talking about the subject, we just start talking about it differently than we did before they entered in the room. That's politics. We don't even say we want to eliminate politics. Man, we're human beings. We're never going to get this perfect. We want to minimize them in teams and organizations. So whatever conversation we're having about the business, we can have the same conversation the same way with anybody on the team. The second attribute is around minimizing confusion. I mean, something to even slow down and think about now is when you think about your organization, what is something that you don't have the degree of clarity that you wished you had? And maybe around your purpose, could be values, could be around your strategy, could be around priorities, could be anything. I don't think there's anything such as perfect clarity, but there's a lot of organizations where confusion is running rampant, and then that can turn into politics. So in our work with teams and organizations, we're really trying to fight two things. We're fighting politics and we're fighting confusion. When we fight those things and we win the battle, we get two things. We get high productivity or increasing productivity. We're just more efficient. We get more done. And we get higher and better morale. So I look at politics and confusion as leading indicators. I look at productivity and morale essentially as lagging indicators. And so very specifically when I'm talking with leadership teams, but this also pertains to us if we're an individual agent. The moment that you feel like, man, my productivity is going down, or it's not where I wish it was going to be, or I'm not having as much fun, my morale is going down or has gone down. Here's what I want people to look at. I want them to look at politics and confusion. And I believe every time when morale or productivity is dipped, we can look up at politics and confusion, and there we can find the problem. And that's then what we need to address. And then the last attribute of a healthy organization is low turnover, specifically among our best people. We're always going to lose people. In fact, when somebody's not a good values fit, if they don't value learning, they're not going to be a good fit at Keller Williams. But our top people, man, they're staying. They have options because they're a top producer, and they stay because of the productivity and morale. And the reason that you have high productivity and morale, because you figured out how to minimize politics and minimize confusion. Final thing I'll say there is you never arrive. Even if today somehow you were able to give yourself a score of 100 on politics and confusion, every day it's like a fresh battle. Every day things are changing. As leaders, every day we got to say, how do we root those things out of our organization?
That's great. One of the things I like that Patrick Lencioni says when he looks at healthy versus smart, you know, he's rarely ever, if ever, come across a company that he evaluated and said, these people just aren't smart enough, you know, to get the job done. It's like, that's never the problem. There's always plenty of smart people to get it done. It's always, you know, there's politics, there's not clarity, there's these other things, and that, you know, you can work to get a little smarter. That gives you, you know, a little degree of improvement. But if you get healthier, then people get smarter. As you get healthier, you get smarter. You don't necessarily wait, am I saying that right? You get smarter as you get healthier, but as you get smarter, you don't necessarily get healthier. So just focusing on healthy kind of almost takes care of both, you know.
Pat, you know, our signature book that he's written is called The Advantage. And the reason that he called the book The Advantage is we believe that health is the ultimate competitive advantage in organizational life today. And I'll give a company example here. So I'm in Atlanta, Chick-fil-A is based here, worked with Chick-fil-A for 10 years, love them or hate them, you know, don't worry about that. But here's why I bring them up. If you just look at the numbers, if you compare them to their competition, they are absolutely killing it. And if you went to their president and chief operating officer or CEO and said, how have you guys just killed it over the last decade? They would tell you it is a disproportionate amount of focus and investment into organizational health, into minimizing politics and confusion. And as a result, they've made really, really, really good decisions and they're really, really smart, but the health has allowed them to fully maximize it. And that has been the key to their success. And I'm not saying that that's exactly what their top leaders has been their secret.
So you basically made Chick-fil-A. You're the reason they're
No. You know what I love about them too, is they were healthy before starting to work with us. I think, and I hope that we have added to their health, but like Keller Williams, they value learning and development. And so they were healthy before working with them. But I'll tell you this, every organization battles dysfunction, and they would also say, man, they have not fully figured it out. They still have their organizational politics and confusion challenges. We like to think we've helped them just a little bit, but now they're solid even before us.
Awesome. So another question I had, we have a lot of staff members on the call, and I can't remember the book now. I've read them all, but there's a book that's all about employee engagement, and there are some great concepts in there of how you can tell, if employees are engaged. And I think there was, maybe you guys always do 3. I think there were 3 items maybe that you can talk about. Can you talk about those concepts?
Yeah. So the book is called The Truth About Employee Engagement. And it says, and Pat likes to, especially in the books, kind of approach it from a negative perspective, meaning what are the things that would cause someone to be miserable in their job. In fact, the original book title was called 3 Signs of a Miserable Job. It didn't sell very well, and the publisher discovered, like, who wants to have that on their desk at work? That's probably not good for job security. So they ended up changing it to the 3 Truths about employee engagement. And what we need to be engaged, regardless of frontline worker on up to the C-suite, we have to overcome irrelevance. We need to know that our job matters, of how whatever we do day to day, how it ties into the big picture, and have a sense of purpose and of belonging as what we do every day. So we got to overcome irrelevance. Secondly, we have to overcome, I'm horrible at saying this word, being anonymous. I'm going to say it that way. There's a way to say it. I apologize.
Anonymity?
Anonymity. There it is. Al, you said it way better than me. Yes. Anonymity. For whatever reason, I have a hard time saying that word. It's being known. It's feeling like specifically our boss knows us and cares about us. And then the third thing we have to overcome is immeasurability, meaning we need to be able to measure what we do and how it contributes to the organization in a tangible way. An example from the book, in this book, a person, the kind of the leader, buys this restaurant that has a drive-through and is working with the young person, the teenager, working the drive-through on these things of how to overcome irrelevance, how to be known, and then how to count what they do. And he's like, man, I'm in the drive-through. Like, how do I count this? Is the number of cars that go through? And he tells them, well, do you control the number of cars it goes through? No, it's got to be something that what you do in your job, you actually control and influence. And ultimately, the thing they arrived at is, what could he count for every shift that he does? It was how many people that go through the drive-through could he make smile? It was something that he could directly impact. It's not even something like quantifiable in a spreadsheet or anything like that. It's just like, make a tick mark. Anytime you make somebody smile that goes through the drive-through, like, count it. And then it's just the ability to almost play a game with ourselves of how many people can I make smile today? So it is, once again, if we talk about ourselves and if we're discouraged, probably it has something to do with not feeling known, not feeling like what I do is really relevant or counts, or simply not being able to measure it. I think being an agent, typically it's pretty easy to measure our success, but we got to make sure that we are helping others feel known, and helping them know what they do makes a difference and an impact, both to the organization's mission, but also on others.
Awesome. This is probably an unfair question. I don't expect an answer, but we have a lot of our staff here that are employees that like me, support the agents. And I'd be curious if anybody would be willing to say, of those three things as an organization, which one do you think, we need to work hardest on, where maybe we're lacking the most? And if you don't want to answer, I totally understand. I'm putting you on the spot.
I love the question, Al. Talk about being vulnerable.
If people won't answer, that maybe says something about me too as a leader. Like, nobody wants to say it because they're going to have a bad reaction or something, Colleen, Hal, you're the two people I think might
repeat the question. What was the question?
The question is, you just went through, the three things that will make our team, potentially unhappy. If they feel like they're not known, if they feel like, the anonymity. Now I can't say it either.
Al, I'll jump in on that. I think these Ask Al Anything calls have moved the dial light years away from where we were 90 days ago. I think too many people in this organization didn't know who you were. And the fact that you're still doing these even 3 days a week and giving people a forum to ask you anything, I think that's a big deal. And for me, I don't know too many organizations that do that.
Well, thank you. But of the one we had to fix or work on, what would you say it would be? Or do people feel it was, being able to measure their job, feeling like they're known, and feeling what they do matters? Is that, that's the way to explain it?
So I'm not thinking like you. I would be thinking more like my own team, and I want to make sure that, they understand that they matter, or that their job matters. And that's something that I want to check.
You need to work on most, do you think?
I want to check in with them and make sure that I'm doing that. I want to make sure that they know. Yeah.
All right. I don't think we're getting that answer today, and I don't blame you. I don't know if I were you, I'd want to pipe up on the.
But the other thing, I'll throw this out. I think from an agent standpoint, and I'm not an agent, so any of the agents who want to chime in on this, we're a really, really big organization, and it's hard to be known. It's really easy to hide, and there's a lot of folks who are dual career and not really active, and not. I think there's a lot of folks who feel a sense of not being connected, not being known. And I know that part of what I do every day is try to call through rosters and just reach out to folks and say hello. And I think that helps. But we've got hundreds of agents, I think, who still need to feel a greater sense of connection to who we are.
Yeah.
That's
Agreed.
true. That's a good point, Hal.
Yeah.
Good point.
To feel a
I
connection.
was thinking of my team, my little team, but you're thinking in a much bigger way, and absolutely. Yeah.
How do we do that? I mean, I've recognized that for a while, and I've read things about, to make a big company seem small, create these like affinity communities, the group of agents that either by their level of experience or volume or, around things that they like to do, the people who like to play bingo have the bingo night, and maybe those people get to know each other and they form an affinity group, or people that like to tailgate at Giants games or something. I think we've done a little bit of that, but I don't know if we could probably do more,
Agree.
Like, how do you break it down into 20 people chunks? So even if they don't know all 1,400 people, they have 19 other people that they feel close with,
But it always seems like the same people keep showing up, so how do you reach the everybody else?
Creating the events that the other people want to go to, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And Al, I do think it is community, and the more people that can feel known by others in the organization, that is a positive thing. From our work with teams, though, we find the biggest thing is the manager. That whoever I report to, that I feel known by that person. And even if I have a lot of peers in community across the organization, but I don't feel known by my manager or whoever I would associate with kind of up in the organization, that's where we find people struggle and ultimately leave organizations because they're not known there. And I think having activities, same thing, it's positive, can help people feel known, but it's just the basics. It's like knowing about them personally, what matters to them, family, things like that, that feels so basic until we slow down and say, how much do I really know personally about the people that I work with? And so as we work with managers, it's lean in, whatever you figure out what you don't know, and then begin to lean in to really begin to become a student of that. And not as exercise, check the box, but hopefully because you genuinely care about them and you want them to feel known.
So we do.
If I could jump in.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if I could just jump in, I think people feel connected when their opinions matter and when they're asked, what do they think? Change also comes easier when people are involved in that change process. So I think people need to know that what they think, what their opinions, what they want, that they're asked. Then they feel a connection, maybe ahead of feeling connected, but that very call, that very reach out would be important, especially to our outliers, those who are dual career and we don't see them.
So how do we get better at that? You're saying like we should involve agents in some of the decisions we make and we don't?
Yeah, well, I think it's easy to do that. It's hard to reach out to 1,400 agents, and yet many of those agents should be reached out to. It will pull them in.
Break it down, like for Eileen runs, her market center, so that's only still a lot of people. She has to reach out to 200 or 250 people, and maybe you can break it down from there.
But I do think that doing more of this, especially for the dual career, having some, being able to reach them at a time then maybe they couldn't come into the market center, but we could get face to face with them here. I think it has brought us closer.
Yeah.
As a whole group.
Are you saying to do this maybe in the evening?
I'm just, we've done that. We've done bingo, but I'm just saying not to stop this. This is everything that we've learned during COVID, we have to add it to. It's going to change the way we do things.
So one thing that's helped me, David, and I don't know if the people like it or not, but for the people that just directly, report to me, Colleen's one of them, we have a call every morning just to talk about what we're doing. And one of the things they started doing a couple of months ago is every morning, I just ask a question. Like sometimes it's a deep question, like, what's your best childhood memory? Sometimes it's just what's your favorite movie? And then the next day I ask the whole team, it's usually like 6 people, what the answer was from the day before. It's almost like forcing us to know each other. I like it because I've learned so much about all the other people. Sometimes I wonder, do they feel like, oh, you're putting me on the spot early in the morning. I don't feel like, answering what's the meaning of life, at 8:30 a.m. every day. But, when I look at the spreadsheet of the facts that I found out, and I don't know, it makes me feel closer, and hopefully it makes them feel like they know me and I know them. But I don't know, and maybe that's something
great idea
on our other teams,
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, Al, that it's not just the 1,400 feeling attached to you, but it's you feeling attached to the 1,400.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. That's interesting.
Colleen, what do you think? Is that more annoying or more helpful? Be honest.
No, I enjoy it because we all learn something about each other.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe you can do
I
it.
wanted to point out Renee has her hand up. Renee, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. I just wanted to give some perspective from, an agent's perspective as far as communication and connecting with you personally, Al. I think that I sign on to a lot of these calls, and I think that they're wonderful. They're informative. They make me feel connected to the office, even though I'm not in the office. But I think a way to reach out to people at different levels, because there are so many of us. I'm probably kind of in the middle. I'm not a tremendously high producing agent, but I do a decent amount of production. I do spend time in the office when the office was open, and I try to stay connected to, my fellow associates. But maybe once things are a little more settled, if you were to continue these calls and do them in smaller invited groups, and maybe you reach out to agents by their years of service, if you're anyone who's an agent from maybe this isn't just an example, 1 to 3 year agent, I don't know, 3 to 5 year agent, and you just have many different groups of agents because there are so many of us. And I think if you reach out to them based on their experience, their productivity level, you kind of reach, you'd be addressing their needs, because I think everyone's needs are different.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an awesome idea, and I would love to do that. I'll tell you, like going back to the Hungry, Humble, Smart, if there's a fourth one, like called Insecure, that would be more me. Like, honestly, I would love to do that. And it's not that I'm too busy. More my concern is if I say, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm only going to invite 30 people. My fear is I get on it and I'm on it by myself or with one person, because well, I invited 1,400 to this one and we have 50 people. So if I break it down to 30, I'd like to spend as much time with our agents as I can. I'll give you another example, and I'm not being defensive. Like, I just want you guys, I want more contact with people. So we have, 40 or 50 employees, always said, you're not around enough. Maybe I don't have enough one-on-one time with you. So I set up this whole acuity scheduling thing. You can schedule appointments with me in half-hour increments. I sent it out to all of the employees saying, I'd really love to chat with you guys. Just book an appointment. It could be about something specific. It could be about, I'll help you with your finances. It could just be to shoot the breeze. Literally not one person made an appointment with me. So it makes me a little, nervous about scheduling.
Right, yeah, tentative that you'll have a party and no one will come.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. That's what it is. It was a good
idea. Yeah, well,
my party, Renee. I'll have the party.
Okay, I'll be at the party.
All right, cool. But I think that's a great idea, so I would be happy to do that. And I do plan on continuing this for sure,
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think this has been wonderful. And I've learned more about you during COVID than I have in, the almost 6 years that I've been with the company. And that's, I'm really grateful for that.
That's good news on one hand and sad on the other hand that I'm doing a bad job before this of getting.
Well, no, I don't know that you're doing a bad job. I think it's a shared responsibility.
Well, thank you for saying that. Letting me off.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And thanks for the idea. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, we are coming to a close. I think we have a relatively hard stop at 5. I think David said he could spend a couple minutes over, but not much. He's a busy guy. Does anybody have any specific questions for David?
I think Joanne has his hand raised.
All right.
Hi. I just kind of wanted to suggest something that Colleen brought up. It's for those dual career agents. We have implemented in Woodcliff Lake this daily video that RTL sends out, or that I send out every other day. And I feel like it's a great way for them to engage because it's on their time. So sometimes we ask our agents to be during business hours, during our times. And I feel like the best engagement for them with us is to do it at their time as well. So kind of creating that video library that they can go and access at any time has actually worked really well with Woodcliff Lake engagement. And I see that some of the agents who have other jobs are actually more tuned in and more aware of what's going on in our office because of these kinds of things that we're doing.
I think that's a great suggestion. I think I'll mention it, but I think the way to maybe get it done, Joanne, I know you have a monthly mastermind with the other MCAs. If you can, just share how great it's working in your market center and ask them to talk to their team leaders about maybe doing it. Because I know I enjoy it. My favorite television show is the Colleen morning videos. I don't miss it. Must see TV.
All right, Al, what did I talk about today?
I haven't watched today's yet. Sometimes I like to bunch them up, get some food, and cast it to my big screen and watch it all.
Friday night entertainment, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Were you saying something, Joanne?
Oh, I was just saying that you were binge watching Colleen. But ultimately, the point of my conversation was we need to start doing things at our agents' time. So maybe extended office hours or things like that allow them to come to us whenever they're available and not just force them into our schedule.
I think that's a great point. And so does everyone else, because I'm looking around. I see a lot of heads shaking. I see Heidi shaking her head. Awesome. Well, thank you for that input, Joanne. As always, very helpful. And thank your dad for those for protecting all of our dophies with those great plexiglass surround things that he's doing. And he actually made them look classy. I was kind of like, oh, they're gonna look bad, but they look really cool. So that was awesome. Thank you for that.
Just wait for Rutherford tonight is gonna be the best of all. But thank you for taking the time to protect us. Definitely.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Anything else for David? Last call. Colleen, Hal. Is Hal still on? Al is a certified John Maxwell coach. I don't know if you remember the guy I was talking before with the beard. So
Yeah, I do. Yep.
He's gunning for your job someday, David. All right. Well, I guess that wraps up. Unless David, you have any kind of parting comments before we wrap it up?
Just really appreciate you having me on. Truly a raving fan of the organization, and really excited in the coming months to spend more time working with Al and the team. So keep up the great work, and can't wait to get on a flight before long and come up and see you guys.
Yeah, I think it's August, isn't it? Hopefully.
August,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I do like the facial hair. When I saw last time I saw you in March, you were clean shaven. I like it.
That is true. We'll see if we can keep it going. We'll ultimately, it's my wife's decision. We'll see if I can talk her into it.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again.
Thank
Thanks for taking
All
time.
right. Thanks, you guys. See you.
Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Happy Wednesday. Bye, everybody.